Well, all right then. So we're back. As you can see, we changed some things. Um, different part of town, dark side, back in 256 north side, old neighborhood. Had to take a lunch break and get access to power. So it's just so cold up in there. I wasn't going inside there. But I didn't want to stop because there's a rhythm that we found that is important that I know needs to continue. So we're now on part six of this conversation. Questions. Can you save the world? Question. Is there an invisible hand controlling the world? Question. Are you more focused on the future, the past, or the present? Question. How many people really know you? Question. When do you feel most alone? Question. When are you most fulfilled? Question. When do you feel most loved? You know why I needed to read that fast? Like reading it fast would make me more convincing. Question. Why do you have the career you have? We could talk about this all day. Question. If you didn't do that, what would you be doing? I love those questions. It's another whole thing about regret. I tried to make sure that I never got to the place where I had any regrets. It's the whole thing about risk that I've always aspired to. Uh, Movies like Jerry Maguire, Secret of My Success. It's all these movies where there's this arc where someone wants to go to someplace, usually like New York, work at this amazing firm, have this amazing job, corner office, penthouse, like over the city, and then they get it all, and they find out after having given their lives to get this whole thing, it never was the thing that made them happy after all. So there's a way in which I embrace this narrative as a potential, very likely potential for my life arc to go. And so I've done several things in my life to make sure that was my arc. And in some ways, I've overcompensated and not been present enough in my moment in order to prevent myself from looking back after the moment saying that I'd wasted the time. I told you time is this recurring thing for me. So anyway, there's this way in which I think I may have wasted some opportunities or not gotten the most out of opportunities because I was thinking too much about not regretting having spent the time. Question. If you didn't do that, what would you be doing? You said that. Question. What is the world made of? Question. What are you made of? All right, and here's another set. Starts off as questions, but this is another set of questions. What is the cause of my need to be excited? Anytime you ask me how I'm doing, or anytime I start talking, first thing I say is, I'm so excited, so excited. You know, I'm a very excitable person, but there's this need I have to be excited. Like that's part of my presentation. Like if I'm not excited, then something is wrong. Uh, where does that come from? Next book, word meaning fighting giants phenomenon. Yeah, there's this way in which I feel like my whole life was geared toward preparing me to fight giants. And I was trying to think of a title for my life story that would include that as an idea, as one thought. Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. There is a quote there that I think is really important that comes from. Do I need to spend my energy that way, or is there someone else on the front line I can support? Like that. Now, while I was on my way to Panera one day a few weeks ago, I heard, I guess it was a song Explorer, I don't know why I keep calling it Exploder. I guess in my mind, the show breaks apart the song into many different pieces. But anyway, the artist's name was Joy Alakoti. a lot of Kun. Uh, well, I didn't know at the time, but fell in love with. Ended up finding her Tiny Desk on YouTube and her album Defend Your Own Happiness. Got that idea, possible title for my book too. Although I don't think I want the whole book to be about defense as much. I think it should be more offensive. Offend your own happiness, which is really cool. There's work there. Here's a quote from Jerry Jones, Hard Knocks, episode 1 this season. It's it's a better world to be naive than to be skeptical and negative. Here's another quote. I'm not sure. Oh, all right. So there's this image of Michael B. Jordan embracing Chadwick. Chadwick Chadwick Boseman. And there was all of this conversation around the level of intimacy displayed in photograph. Now that we know Chadwick filmed almost all of the movies he became famous for while being treated for cancer and dying from cancer, we read this image differently than we did then. And so someone posted on Facebook, been thinking about this photo a lot lately and the reactions and conversations it brought up. We wasted so much time, it means it's fucking time, debating about masculinity and and how brothers should act, should in quotations, in public. And so many of us ignored the simple truths in this photo that are more obvious than ever now that Chadwick's gone. In the moment, while his body was being relentlessly attacked by cancer and the exhaustion that fighting it causes, held with embrace with a close friend or special on a special night. I think this is the Oscars or something. Knowing that he might not live to experience any of it ever again. This man was controlling his humanity and was trapped in meaningless arguments about ultimately irrelevant bullshit. Life is too short, and the worst thing we can do is take each moment and each person in our life for granted. I just love that. And then there's this meme next to it. Let's see what this meme says. A true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. It's a quote by C.K. Chesterton, who I do not know. He may be a musician since there's somebody there. Everyone has felt the strain of the last 24 months. This was a quote about the pandemic, I'm sure. Redemption is not the theme for this book, but it is coming. There was a way in which I felt the theme of redemption cropping up repeatedly for me in this book, but I wanted to reiterate that this is not a book about redemption. That theme is important in my journey, but this is not the time. You haven't done the risk. You haven't fallen yet in the journey. Redemption should come after the fall, which will probably be book 4. Book 3 is going to be about falling, failing, fighting. Here are other examples for chapters for book 2. Striking out. This is inspired by Man's Search for Meaning double entendre. Striking out as in launching out into the deep to find yourself, but also striking out as in forgetting those things which are behind. Quote, struck out my whole former life, struck out, like struck from the record. Within that conversation, finding the courage of convictions. In personal convictions, which will be mentioned later, I made myself a firm promise on my first evening in camp that I would not run into the wire. This is from Man's Search for Meaning. This was a phrase used in camp to describe the most popular method of suicide, touching the electrically charged barbed wire fence. It was not entirely difficult for me to make this decision. There was little point in committing suicide since the average inmate life expectation, calculating objectively and counting all likely chances, was very poor. He could not, with any assurance, expect to be among the small percentage of men who survived all the selections. A prisoner, uh, all the selections. The prisoner of Auschwitz in the first phase of shock did not fear death. Even the gas chambers lost their horrors for him after the first few days, after they all spared him the act. After all, they spared him the act of committing suicide. The grave should not inherit one single dream, vision, destiny, or call from God. I think LeBron Friend said this. This is from the Emerge transcript, September 3rd, which I have but haven't watched. Let's see where we are. Stop right there.